So last year, I did a video on Atlus's 2023 and what could possibly be announced that year. So this year, I figure might as well just do one for 2024.
So, thanks, man.
Watching back my video from last year, I very evidently just kinda put out anything I could possibly think of. I mean, it's still pretty impressive I managed to somehow forget to mention Persona 3 Remake, or Reload now that we know what it is. Yet, I put that in the thumbnail. Regardless, yeah, we did wind up with some huge announcements last year. Persona fans got Reload and Tactica, we got a brand new IP, Metaphor ReFantazio, and we got Vanilleware's new Unicorn Overlord. Etrian Odyssey fans got their HD collection as well. It's a very strong year for Atlus last year, at least in terms of announcements. The release side was kind of just okay. I mean, HD collection for a very niche series. Granted, it was also pretty controversial with the pricing and the games being re-released. I know there's an argument on whether the 3DS remakes are better. A lot of people were talking about that on my video. And a Persona 5 spin-off is not really it's kind of a major release because the game probably did okay, but it's not a huge release because Tactica is also definitely made on a budget. Not that any of that's a bad thing, of course, but it looks like 2024 is going to be a very promising year for the company in terms of releases.
Yeah.
They're starting off pretty strong this year with Persona 3 Reload. You know, perfectly timed at the beginning of February, right in between two other major giant JRPGs. Why are you like this? While Vanilleware's games are made by Vanillaware, obviously, Atlus does publish them, so I guess it kind of counts. I mean, they're kind of advertised together.
Atlus and Vanillaware.
But regardless, Unicorn Overlord comes out barely a month later, too. As far as we know after that, Atlus is probably going to focus on promoting their big, shiny new IP. This game has been in development for about 8 years, I think, 7 or 8 years, so that's pretty significant. 2 major releases and 1 minor release, I guess, in a single year is really nothing to sneeze at, considering how Atlus seemingly has been focused on 1 major release per year since Persona 5. Now, as for the announcements...
Jack Frost!
Well, announcements are going to come down to predictions, obviously, so it's time for me to guess. You know, see if I can predict Atlus's next move, or if I'm off my rocker. Let's talk about Persona first, since that's what most of you are probably here for. There have been many a Persona rumor in the last few months, the notable ones coming from this one person whose name I do not know how to pronounce. Again, I try not to cover rumors too often because sometimes it can be a little misleading with how information gets spread, and sometimes things fall through holes. When a company is not ready to announce something publicly, that could mean that they were working on something and it just fell through the cracks. There's nothing you can do about it. But some of the stuff mentioned does kind of correlate, kind of connect with Sega's own words. In Sega's chief operating officer's words, the company is also launching 2 new Persona games in 2024, which is strange considering the fact we know the existence of 1 major Persona game next year. So what could this mean? Well, simply put, we know one of them is P3 Reload. It may be a remake, but it's effectively a new game and effectively a major release. The other one could be a few things, but I'll start off by saying there is a near 100% chance it's not Persona 6. Do not expect Persona 6 next year. That game is probably coming out a few miles down. If you think Atlus is going to launch P6 the same year as another major game, especially a brand new IP, you might be smothering yourself in hopes and dreams. I think there are 2 very likely possibilities for this. The first being Persona 5 The Phantom X, the Persona mobile game that is being developed by Perfect World Games. However, I have an inkling that this game is probably not getting a simultaneous worldwide release. I mean, it's almost like they said the base version that is being advertised right now is for China. On top of that, it's probably being published by Perfect World themselves, because I'm pretty sure they've published their own games. It's licensed by Sega and Atlus, but, you know, publishing is another man. So I don't know if that really counts as a Sega release, but I also just don't think that's what's being referred to here, considering the fact that last year they said this game had no plans for a worldwide release as of right now. That's most definitely changed based on what we've heard about the feedback, but I don't know if that counts. It's been said by a few notable people that there is some kind of Persona party game spin-off in development, regardless of what you may think of that and what I may think of that. If it exists, then that game is probably launching next year. It doesn't really matter which Persona spin-off it winds up being, but if there is another Persona game launching next year, then it's probably a spin-off. I doubt it's a mainline title, or another remake. I just don't see that as likely at all.
No.
So I mentioned P6 before, and obviously I'm sure some of you are interested in Persona 6. You know, surely people who are interested in the Persona franchise are interested in the next mainline title. But if P6 is coming out at any point, which, you know, probably is, it's not in 2024. Probably 2025 at the earliest, and I am still a firm believer that we are relatively close to an announcement. Relatively. Not close, but relatively close. It's wholly possible that Atlus teases Persona 6 this year, either maybe in June-ish around whatever E3-like, you know, Summer Games Fest kind of thing is going on, as Atlus seems to like to participate in some of those events, or December-ish with, you know, stuff like the Game Awards. Persona 5 Tactica being the first Persona spin-off in recent history to be announced outside of a concert, I think that means Atlus has realized that their kind of weird niche way of marketing their Persona titles will do nothing but hold them back. So Persona 6, I guesstimate, is probably a late 2025 or mid 2026 game. At least as of right now. It could always change, you know, it could get delayed internally without us knowing. If Atlus is still aiming for one major game release per year, then I'd say it's definitely not coming out this year, and it's more likely a next year kind of game. But if it is next year, it'll probably be announced this year.
Worth it. Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne would never take advantage of our innate gullibility.
And speaking of Persona, you got Shin Megami Tensei. SMT has been pretty silent since 5 dropped in 2021. There are rumors scattered around that the game will make its way to PC and other platforms, and that we're due for an expanded release of the game sooner or later. Which admittedly is possible. I think that's a very reasonable rumor or guess, whatever it may be. Persona 5 stood on its own for about 2.5 years before Royal was announced and released. It's definitely possible that SMT5 is going to get that same treatment. Maybe not as rapidly, but in the eventual span of time, it's possible. But I'm kind of iffy on that, personally. There's no doubt in my mind that with how exclusives are much more commonly becoming timed instead of full exclusives from third parties, the SMT5 will eventually make its way to other platforms. But I'm not sure if that's really a this year thing. I mean, it does fit the mark if they are proceeding with development at the same rate. Then sometime around maybe June, you would get an announcement for an SMT5 expanded release, and then maybe it'd release like 6 or 7 months down the line. But it wholly depends on if new content is coming. An SMT5 re-release without new content could really just be a middle of the year thing, and it wouldn't really be the worst thing in the world. But I feel like if it was, they would have already announced it. I don't really know. I mean, we're kind of like on the border of when things should be announced versus when they release. Now, as for something like SMT6, that's not happening for a long time. I'm sorry. But last year, I also talked about that Etrian Odyssey teaser that Atlus released somewhere in, I think, 2018. And since they did drop a big HD remaster, I'm inclined to believe that they may be closing in on the end of development. You know, you want to get people interested in the series and then release a new game and people will play it. But I don't think this constitutes as a major release. It's kind of hard to say because I don't know how well this game is going to sell. The series is still quite niche, and I don't think the remasters did especially well in their purpose because they're charging $80 for 3 pretty old games. And while there is significant work done on them based on what I've seen, it's not really justifiable to the consumer. So I think an Etrian game is probably closer than we think, but again, it's not something I expect to see launching this year. An announcement, probably, but release, I don't think so. I think if anything, the next Etrian game could launch next year, like early next year, because you could count it as a major release because it's another big, or not big IP, but I'm droning on here. Let's move on.
This isn't real.
Honestly, things are shaping up pretty good for Atlus this year, especially in terms of releases. Assuming that thing about the second Persona game is true, then that means Atlus has 4 releases this year, which is quite a lot. Hopefully everything pans out well. They aren't always able to deliver high quality in all fields, but if they want to be known as more than the Persona company, which is kind of what all their marketing is relying on right now. I mean, even Metaphor, they go, every time it gets shown, they're like, from the creator of Persona 5, or from creator of Persona 3, 4, and 5.
It tells of a world united as one tribe.
The RPG from the creators of Persona 3, 4, and 5.
Obviously, it's a marketing tactic. You know, that's just how things are. But if they do want to be known as more than the Persona company, you gotta hit those high marks on quality. And if you think Atlus is going to knock it out of the park this year, or if you think they're gonna fall flat on their face, or whatever you might think, maybe predictions for announcements, you can leave a comment down below. As always, you can leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to the channel for more things Atlus, JRPG, and Persona related. This year I kind of want to switch things up a little bit, but we'll see how that goes. I'll be pretty vague about it because I don't want to make any empty promises. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.